Hi ladies, I'm Pidge.
And I'm Moen.
Welcome to the Night Shift Court podcast. We are two shift-working fantasy book lovers and love nothing more than leaving reality behind for a bookish adventure.
Join us as we go under the mountain to discuss our favourite fantasy fiction tales and the authors behind them.
Come with us to explore the stories, one shift at a time. Hi ladies.
Hi! Welcome back.
A little bit better and a little bit worse.
Always. Welcome back, everyone. We are at episode 20. I cannot believe we're here already.
Yeah, I feel like it's gone really fast.
From episode 10 to episode 20 has just flown by.
Yeah, I think it's because we love this book.
We do love this book.
I really did enjoy rereading the first one.
Yeah.
But I think I enjoy this one the most.
Oh, there's a big crescendo that, these next few chapters will be just really getting deep in the romantasy genre.
Indeed.
So as we've discussed episode 20, this will cover chapters 41 to 45.
And last time we left off that they just had their meeting with the queens. The queens had asked for some evidence to prove that Rhys wasn't an evil villain like he portrays himself to be outside of the Night Court. They fly and then winnow back to the townhouse after the meeting. They're all feeling pretty deflated after it. And Rhys walks out into the garden. Everybody follows. Cassian suggests that they should assassinate the queens.
Yeah.
Which was my first thought as well.
Such a warmongering thing to suggest, isn't it? He's like, let's just kill them all. But we kind of need one of them to give the book.
Well, what he was hoping was that they would assassinate the current ones and then new, younger queens would come forth and be the six queens.
Yeah.
And they would see why they needed the book and why it was important.
So with no history and no bias and things like that.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
well, that's actually not a bad idea, Cassian.
Yeah. And I mean, they were just there and it was only there was a few guards, nowhere near enough, I don't think, to have with Rhys, Cassian and Asriel there. They just missed the perfect opportunity to kill everybody.
Yeah, that is quite a thought.
Yeah.
Especially Rhys with his mind talons.
Yes. Well, anyway, I'm in support. But now that...
You would be.
Kill everyone, whatever. So now that they're back, Asriel says that that's not possible anymore because he's got spies in the mortal court and he's basically said that it's impossible to get in close to them. So they've missed an opportunity there.
They have.
More offers to go and speak with them again. And Asriel again says there's absolutely no way that she'd be able to get in to speak with them, and he believes that they would kill her just to make an example out of her.
Yeah.
So, it's a big neg.
So we're getting into the story now around Feyre is quizzing Rhys about things that he could possibly give up to...
As the evidence.
Yeah, as evidence for the queens to know that he's not cruel and twisted like they have heard he is. So we're getting to the story of Miriam and Drake. So she basically asks who these people are. She's heard of them in passing, but no real context.
We heard of Miriam in the dining room at the House of Wind when Feyre first agreed to work with them all.
That's right.
Yeah, but there was never any further discussion about her.
Yeah. So now we get to learn what it is and the nitty-gritty about their story. So Rhys says 500 years ago there was a Fey kingdom in the southern part of the continent called the Black Land. And he says there was basically no crueler place for a human to be born into. They were all born in as slaves. It was, it was a really rough time. They were forced to build all of these temples for the Fae and palaces, and it was obviously slavery.
Well, that's what Feyre had said back before in book one, before she went over the wall, she had said that humans were previously slaves to the Fae.
That's right.
And that they'd, built them temples and things like that.
Yeah.
So
she
it sort of links back in.
Yeah, she assumed that it was all still going on and there, like if there were humans in some parts of Prithian that they would be still doing these things for them. So he said the Queen of the Blacklands made Amarantha look sweet.
Oh.
So you can imagine what kind of a shrew she was. So Miriam being half Fae, she had a human mother and she was actually a child of the R word.
That doesn't surprise me given the imagery of the Black Lands. Yep.
Exactly. She was deemed human, basically, and she was denied any right to any side of her Fae heritage. She was just treated as poorly as a human would have been in the Black Lands.
Yeah.
She was given as a wedding gift by the Queen to her betrothed, who was a foreign Fae prince named Draken.
What an interesting wedding gift. I've like to gift
A person.
Yeah. A female as well.
It's not for
All
me.
the political marriages.
Yeah. And I wonder why. Anyway, maybe we'll find out about that later. So Draken was horrified by that notion.
Okay,
And he let Miriam escape, basically. He was like,
Perfect.
you know, some decency in the world. So she fled across the sea and she was found by Durian.
Right.
So now we've got Miriam and Durian together.
Yep.
She became his lover and she was a healer in his army, as we have mentioned before. And in one battle, she attends to his allies, and included in his, allies was Prince Draken. So they come into contact
they
again.
Had Fae allies
That's
as
right.
part of the war.
Exactly.
Yeah. And those are the Fae that had gifted him certain powers against Amaranthum.
That's right.
As well. Yeah.
Yes. So Draken had broken off his engagement to the Queen.
Oh, well, good.
Yes.
I mean, what was your first sign?
Yeah. And had been looking for Miriam for 3 years.
Oh.
Yeah. So there was obviously potentially from his part some sort of feelings there other than just pity and letting her escape.
Yeah.
Being the wedding gift that he didn't ask for.
Yeah.
Odd. So Miriam and Draken end up falling in love, and Miriam ends things with Durian, and they were just lovers. Like I don't think that there was much in the way. Like Durian may have said that he loved Miriam, but Miriam, it was more of
Durian
a situation.
also had Amarantha's sister as his lover.
Betrothed.
Remember? Yeah.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. So I feel like during war times, nobody really commits to anything too much because you never know if you're going to be alive the next day.
That's
so
right.
everyone's lovers.
Yeah.
Just whatever.
Exactly.
Whatever works.
That's so true. So when Durian was killed by Amarantha, Amarantha told him what happened to Miriam.
Okay, yeah.
So before he died, he kind of, or maybe even after he died, to the eye and the finger, I don't know.
Maybe.
She tells him. So he's aware of what has happened to Miriam.
Okay.
And that she betrayed him for a Fae. Everyone believes that Miriam and Draken died, freeing all of their people from the Black Land. At the end, this is at the end of the war.
Yep.
But they actually escaped with all of their people. And Rhys says basically, I'm not going to expose them because they're living happily somewhere.
Yeah.
They've suffered enough. They've given enough. I'm not willing to sacrifice their happiness after everything that they've endured just to prove myself as not cruel. So
Such a Rhys thing to do,
isn't it?
Yeah.
So he's like not willing to give them up, not willing to give Valaris up, but how else is he going to actually show the queens that he's not evil?
Yeah. I wonder if we'll get a story of Miriam and Draken.
I really hope so.
Yeah, one to the side of
I would love
everything
that
happened,
story.
because we do learn a bit about the war, but not a lot of the intricacies of it. Like we obviously know what happens at the end and the role that Amarantha played, but yeah, I would really like a story about that.
I think that we've established that we're creating Sarah so much work, but it just goes to show you like how, wonderful writing brings about the need to know things that are basically not even important to the story, but that you love the story so much you want to know every little bit about it.
Yeah. So Rhys eventually makes up his mind and decides that he's going to show the queens Valaris.
Yeah.
He's going to sacrifice his small portion of court for the greater good of Perinthian. However, the queens had raised they didn't want Rhys to show them something from his mind because they know that he has powers in that in that area. So they're basically saying, well, it could be a trick. You could be showing us something that doesn't actually exist. So he decides in order to show them that they need to go to the Court of Nightmares and they need to retrieve the orb, which is its official name is
The Veritas.
the Veritas.
Yeah.
This particular orb is important because it basically has the truth magic like more. So apparently it was gifted to her family a very, very long time ago, and it's remained in the family as such. And I think that there's something important here between the orb and Moore's magic, because we actually don't know a huge amount about her magic other than that it's truth magic.
That's all we know, really. We don't know how it manifests or
So this orb also contains that same magic.
Yes.
So anyway, that's what they're going to use.
Yep.
They're going to prove to the queens that it's not a mind trick and show them Valaris through the orb.
It actually makes me really stressed.
I get it, but it's in between a rock and a hard place, isn't it? Like Rhys has done so much to protect his court and he is now willing to sacrifice it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bit sad. Anyway, so that night, Feyre goes for a little walk to clear a hedge, comes back and Rhys is waiting for her. They're going to the Court of Nightmares tomorrow and he is considering asking her to stay behind because he doesn't like the role that he's going to ask her to play, which is essentially a distraction.
Yes.
So that the orb can be stolen without anyone noticing. So
he's essentially asking her to be his whore under the mountain. So like there's a big role reversal here and a big parallel drawn between Amaranth and Rhys and Feyre.
Yes. Rhys actually also tells her during this conversation about Moore's history with the Court of Nightmares. So that's where she's from. As we know, her father and mother are there. Rhys tells her that Moore was engaged, because she was so strong and powerful, they could have their pick of suitor for her. So they chose Eris which is the oldest brother of the Autumn Court, Baron's son.
That's right.
He was chosen and she was engaged.
Yeah.
That's decided by the parents back in the day. Moore was clearly devastated by this as she had heard of his cruelty. And so Rhys took her to one of the Illyrian camps for a few days to get away from her family and have a little bit of headspace. Very intelligently, Moore decided that she would do the one thing that would ruin her value, which is her virginity. So she seeks out Cassian as the strongest, most handsome Illyrian at the camp.
Sure.
And requests his services.
Yeah.
Over and done with, she returns to her family. It was a big kerfuffle. Everyone got in trouble. Everyone yelled and screamed and cried and, stomped their feet on the ground and was very upset. When they were done with Moore, they nailed a note to her and then left her on the Autumn Court border. So... She's had a pretty traumatic time growing up in the Court of Nightmares.
Yeah. And Azriel found her days later.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
Can you imagine a time, and quite often I think, it would be nice to be born in ye olde worldy such and such, given our love of history / coziness.
Yeah.
But imagine being cast away because you were promised to someone and you were no longer a virgin. They'll be like, well, no, sorry, you're ruined. Off you go. And getting something nailed onto you and just left for dead.
Yeah. It's pretty rough.
Horrendous. How she's a functioning member of society, I don't understand.
How she's the princess of the Court of Dreams.
Exactly.
So next day they winnow and fly towards the Court of Nightmares. Feyre makes some notes about how tense Rhys is and how frustrated he is, I guess, at the situation.
Yeah.
So in typical Rhys and Feyre fashion, she decides to flirt with him to try and break the tension. She brings up to him, and we don't see if this or know if this conversation actually happens. I feel like it's just something Feyre made up. But, it might have happened. I can't imagine Amren saying this, but she says, Amren and Moore told me that the span of an Illyrian's wing says a lot about the size of other parts. Penis. So I can't imagine, I can imagine Moore talking about this, but I can't imagine Amren being like, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so this is what I imagine Amren doing. So Feyre and Moore are facing each other and Amren is behind Moore going.
Or when she's like, a Rhys and doing the Cassian.
Yes. That's what I imagine Amren doing because she reminds me of I don't know, a French bulldog or something. It's really mischievous, but also can be really serious. But also is trying not to piss herself laughing.
She just looks serious.
Yeah.
But then in her mind, she's just totally wild.
Playing with you. Yeah. Hilarious.
Anyway, so Feyre says that and Rhys takes the bait and he's like, is that so? They have a little conversation about it. They also have a conversation about how Asriel's wings are the biggest, which is interesting.
Yep.
They have a little bit of sexy conversation back and forth. She like touches his wing and stuff, which is apparently very sensitive.
Yes.
And anyway, that's a small little interaction which serves its purpose, and it distracts Rhys so much that he doesn't see the arrow coming towards them until the very last second.
Yeah. So all of these ash arrows come suddenly flying at them and they basically have this need now to try and hunt down where they're coming from. And Feyre asks to help track with Asriel. And so basically they have a conversation about how useful each of them would be. And I think Feyre and Asriel track on the ground and Rhys and Cassian from the sky. So they find absolutely no one. But it is the second time someone has known where Feyre and Rhys would actually be. So this is starting to get concerning now because we know that this is a very purposeful tracking of their location.
Yeah. Yep. It's also a really important moment for Feyre because originally Rhys tries to send her away with Cassian. He tells Cassian, to take her to the Court of Nightmares. And Feyre's like, no, I can stay and I can help and help with Asriel. He sort of stands there and is like, righto, give me your reasons why you want to stay. And she tells him and he's like, right, well, we've got an hour before we're expected at court, so make it count.
Yeah.
So it's an important moment because she's used to being told no and just to get to safety.
And this is the same thing about going to the Court of Nightmares at all as well, is because Rhys wasn't particularly keen on her attending because of who he has to be and who she has to be at the Court of Nightmares. Yeah. And so there's multiple moments in these last few days that Feyre's been like, oh, he's going to lock me up sort of thing, because that's her MO. She just thinks that he's going to react exactly the same way Tamlin is because she subconsciously compares them all the time.
The next bit is a favourite of Rhys's MO, which is dramatic entrances. Loves himself a dramatic entrance, and so do we.
Yeah, we do.
So Court of Nightmares, Feyre arrives with Moa. She's walking through. She explains its beauty, but also its horror. Rhys had described to her previously that Under the Mountain was a poor man's version of the Court of Nightmares. Yes. And so, she's explaining just how beautifully stunning and magnificent it is, all the carvings and the doors and everything, but also saying that it's horrible. So all of the statues of the carvings are really awful, twisted, snakes eating each other and people killing each other and stuff like that. So
it's like the Chamber of Secrets / the Slytherin common room.
Excuse me.
I know.
That's where I am.
Yes. That's why you love it.
I do. I would quite enjoy the Court of Nightmares.
You would.
So Moore and Feyre arrive and then Moore announces Rhys's arrival. And Feyre describes feeling him before she sees him. So he had shed his glamour of containing his magic and it was filling the room. She describes him as the face of dreams and nightmares, which is really cool. Everybody bows and Rhys comes over and beckons Feyre to the throne. She expects to be just sat next to the throne, but instead he tugs her down onto his lap. He then beckons Moore's father. Keir, thank you. I'd forgotten. Yeah. Forgotten. Beckons him over. And so essentially the orb is in Keir's room.
Yes.
And so Asriel, once Feyre and Rhys beckon him over and start to distract him, Moore, Cassian and Asriel meld into the background and Asriel winnows away to take this orb. Yep. So the whole purpose is to distract Moore's dad.
Yes.
So that he doesn't realise why they're there, because he's the one who looks after the court mainly.
That's
when
right.
Rhys isn't there.
Yeah. And they've done it in beautiful, synchronized swimming event. There's lots of nodding and winking and whatever.
Yes.
But not forgetting Rhys is absolutely playing his part as the master of nightmares.
Yes.
And Feyre atop his lap, the ultimate plaything. They just, this whole thing would have been so hard for Feyre to do because she's not used to this. She wasn't born in this environment. and all of a sudden she has to put on a mask, and because any sniff of error would have resulted in them really fucking this plan up.
And it's not just their sexy show that is the distraction. It's her in particular.
Yes.
Because remembering that Moore's dad, I don't know if he was or wasn't under the mountain, to be honest. I think he probably was.
I don't know.
And so either he's either seen her at the trials and seen her left with Tamlin and now she's here with Rhys, which is shocking enough, or he didn't see her under the mountain and he's heard all these rumours about, Feyre Cursebreaker.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she's here. So it's her in particular that is the distraction as opposed to the show is the added bonus because who could look away from her silk see-through scarf again that she's wearing, so it's not just the show, but it's her in particular.
The red lipstick, the whole 9 yards.
That's right. So Rhys's hands are freezing cold, which is the first thing she knows. You know when your husband puts his hands or feet on you in bed and they're freezing cold? And
I can actually
just got to shiver like that.
Oh, yeah. No, that's not cool.
Yeah. Rhys has the power that I wish my dear husband had, which is to warm his hands.
How epic would that be?
Yeah. So anyway, he's rubbing her thighs and Moore's dad starts to talk about the Court of Nightmares, starts to report on all the marriages, alliances, blood feuds, running costs, expenses, the most boring,
all the boring
most boring meeting you've ever been to. Yeah. Some sexy music begins to play. That's the way I describe it. I think she describes it as dripping honey or something. So you can imagine that probably gives you a better idea of the sort of music that it was. Feyre becomes ultimately randy.
Oh, excuse me, Feyre darling.
Rhys has to shush her in her mind and be like, settle down.
We're here for a reason, not to actually.
Yeah. And then he says to her, his hand goes a little bit too far north.
Ooh.
And he says, it's fine. It means nothing. It's just your body reacting. Oh. And what's even, at first when I read it, I was like, oh, yeah, that, yeah. But then I realised after a while that he probably said that to himself about 1 million times in the 50 years that he was under the mountain and was Amaranth at all. So it's actually
so
sad.
True.
It's a really you think it's
heavy.
You think it's all a sexy moment and everything, but it's actually quite heavy.
Yeah. Oh, that is, and I think it's worse knowing that what he knows and how he feels about her, but he doesn't know that that's in any way reciprocated.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So anyway, Asriel returns and gives a little winkety wink. He got the orb. So we're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're clear.
Do your thing now.
We're clear at scene.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Clear at scene.
Yeah. Feyre hops off Rhys's lap and wanders over to Cassie.
Yeah, so on her way to Cassian, Feyre's walking past Keir and she hears him say, "You'll get what is coming to you, whore." Burn. And
why is he so mad?
Look, he's just a nasty pasty,
isn't he?
So Rhys is proper angry about this because he is.
He does.
This.
He hears everything.
He hears everything. And he goes absolutely bonkers, basically.
Yeah.
He breaks bones in Keir's arms.
Yeah.
And he forces him to apologise to Feyre. And he kind of does.
Yeah.
Through gritted teeth and
he
immense
does,
pain.
but he doesn't mean it.
He doesn't mean it.
Yeah.
He's doing it because he's forced, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he says, "You're not to see a healer. And if you do, you'll be carved to pieces." I think this is really hot. I just love the ultimate power. I understand that this is a dark version of Rhys, but I'm here for it.
I love the imagery that you indeed are a healer, but you love broken bones.
Do like me a broken bone when it's deserved. And
do you ask people that? Do you say, "Was this deserved?"
Look, I don't ask them, but I do think it. Yeah.
He's taken away by 2 Fae males.
Yes.
And Feyre makes note that they look like Moore and they could have been Moore's brothers or cousins, which is really interesting because we don't know a lot about Moore's family. She does mention her mum in a few chapters' time, but we don't know anything about her.
No.
So we don't know anything except what we know right here, right now about her dad.
I want the story of Moore. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need it.
More work for you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Feyre describes Rhys's touch as making her feel alive. So she says, it made me feel as if I'd been asleep for a year, slumbering inside of a glass coffin. And all I could think about was Snow White. She sleeps in a glass coffin.
She does.
And then the prince comes and gives her a kissy and she wakes up. And Rhys didn't give her a kissy, he gave her a touchy in a place that we'd get cancelled for mentioning.
Unmentionables. Where her little laces should be.
Which she's not wearing.
No.
So they winnow now, after their Snow White experience, they winnow to a moonlit lake surrounded by pine trees. Actually sounds really lovely.
It does sound
a lovely
lovely.
spot. Rhys is clearly very pained about what happened in the Court of Nightmares, and we see some real emotion, raw emotion from Rhys around that situation. He apologises to Feyre, and he actually gets really overwhelmed when Feyre starts to, in her mind, she likens again, comparing Rhys and Tamlin.
Yeah.
And he says, he gets annoyed about that. He says, you think I don't know how these stories get written or how this story will be written? I am the Dark Lord who stole away the Bride of Spring. I am a demon and a nightmare, and I will meet a bad end. He is the Golden Prince, the hero who will get to keep you as his reward for not dying of stupidity and arrogance.
Oh, I just want to shake Rhys here because he's so plagued by that. And I'm also a bit mad at Feyre for not, just reassuring him a bit more because
this is a bad interaction between them.
it is. And I would have thought that at this point, if my current beau, if you like, had brought up my ex-beau who was shit, I'd be like, don't talk about him. Like he was a douche.
Yeah.
So I struggle with the fact that Feyre doesn't say Tamlin wasn't all that in a bag of chips.
Yeah. I feel like as friends, which is what she refers to him as in this chapter, she could have done a much better job at reassuring him.
Definitely.
So he says like one thing and he asks her what she wants and she doesn't respond, and then he asks again and she uses her anger, as we know Feyre uses her anger for her magic and her motivation.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's wrongly used here because she just snaps back and gets really angry at him.
Yeah.
And almost makes it about herself as opposed to him.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a bad interaction. I don't love this between them.
No.
And I think it was a mistake for Feyre to say the things that she says. So she gets really mad at him, and in the end she says, who would want to be with you and why would they want to be with you? And who could blame them? Who would want to bother with that sort of mess? Which is that's a low hit, isn't it?
Very low. And I almost was like, I think I probably did the first time I read this, put the book down at this point because I was like, you know what, Feyre, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's never done anything to you really,
Yeah.
especially at this point when we don't know the rest of the bits.
Yeah. I just feel like her anger got the better of her, but she should be able to control her better at this point. Like
She should.
Come on, babe. Come on.
So he takes her back to the house.
He does.
And she waits for him that night to come and see her, but he doesn't. And
No.
she obviously wants to tell him that
She doesn't want to pretend anymore.
No, she doesn't want to write it off as a joke anymore. She plans to tell him that she wants to try with him and try to be something together. And I'm like, oh, now you want to. Like, too little too late. Like,
I'll have him instead.
I know.
You've ruined
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Just move aside, please.
Yeah.
So Rhys doesn't come for breakfast or lunch that day, and she tries to send him a text.
Yes. Yeah.
But it doesn't go through.
Yeah. Because she doesn't know how to make that magic happen.
No.
'Cause every other time it's been initiated by him.
Yeah, which is convenient.
Yeah.
Wish I had that.
Yep.
So Rhys is off basically trying to hunt whoever's been firing ash arrows at them because
They didn't find anything.
No. So they know that someone is tracking Rhys through his magic or, anytime he uses his power or winnows, they can track him that way, and that's how they've been following him.
Isn't it?
It is a bit scary. So they have said that they'll be leaving to go to an Illyrian war camp in 2 days' time. But there's this big thing that they have to do in between.
Yes.
Starfall.
Yes, Amren tells her about that because I think Feyre rages over to Amren's house, doesn't she? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And so Amren tells Feyre that Starfall is what they call it in the Night Court, but it's known as Nynsar in the other courts.
Yes.
Which we've heard about before. That was the sprinkling of the flowers.
Yeah, so it's called the Day of Seeds and Flowers.
Right, okay. Yep.
Yeah. Amren tells Feyre Rhys was basically a ghost when he came back from under the mountain, and Feyre has made him come alive again. Amren also says that she's known many High Lords, but none like him, someone who dreams of peace and freedom. And Feyre notes that Rhys believes that he will be remembered as the villain, as he's said, but the villain, Feyre says, is usually the one who locks up the maiden. Why didn't you say that to him?
What a perfect line for you to have said yesterday.
Yeah, that would have been so nice. So she keeps trying to send him texties and none of them are going to him, obviously. She's trying. She eventually gets really angry.
Again.
For goodness sake, woman, calm down.
She is hormonal, I'm sure of it.
Is she coming on? Because
must be.
Surely.
She is riding the dragon.
She is. And so she writes to him, calling him a coward, and of course that's the text that vanishes.
Oh, yeah.
That goes to him. So she's like, oh.
It's like when you take a screenshot of a conversation with someone and then you send it to the
To the
same
person.
person. You're like, fuck. It's like that. Yes. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So that brings us to chapter 44 and the beauty of Starfall.
The imagery of this dress is just stunning.
Yeah, very famous.
Yeah, but what got me the most was her description of it, that she said, I might have looked like a fallen star, which you can picture it in your mind, can't you, what it would look like.
Black, diamondy.
Yeah.
Awesomeness.
Feyre goes up to the rooftop again to be flown to the House of Wind, which it's so interesting to think back. The first time she walked up onto the rooftop was when Rhys told her that you have to fly up to the House of Wind. You can't winnow or you can walk the 10,000 steps. Now she willingly goes up to the rooftop ready to be flown around.
She ain't doing those 10,000
Whereas,
steps.
yeah, especially in that dress.
Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't want to ruin her hair for Starfall, for goodness sake.
But just that she's so willing now.
Yeah.
Right, like she's become comfortable with it and comfortable in Valaris. She is disappointed though to find Cassian. I mean, she's the first woman ever to be disappointed to find Cassian on their roof.
Can't relate.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, you'll do.
Yeah, you will do. And Cassian like whistles and he's like, ooh, with all those gems and beads, you might be too heavy to carry. I hope you've been practicing your winnowing in case I drop you.
So cheeky. I love him.
I love their relationship is very much like that, and it only gets better as time goes on, I think, between the two of them.
I think so.
But yeah, no, I just thought that was a very Cassian line to say.
It is.
He now flies Feyre up to the House of Wind and strides off, and Moore comes over to save Feyre from being a loner.
Yeah, which is so nice.
Yeah.
Reasons I love Moore. She's so emotionally mature and are very aware that like Feyre is so out of her depth. All of these experiences are brand new.
Yeah.
Feyre has no idea what Starfall is. She's got zero. She's like, okay, we're all dressed up. Everyone in the court is celebrating this Starfall.
Yeah.
What is it, please?
Yeah. And also Feyre's, and I mean, we've all been here before, haven't we? She's surrounded by 3 men. Like, granted, lovely and everything's great, but you do need that girlfriend in your life. And I mean, Amren is not bothering herself with trivial female issues, right?
Yeah.
So Moore has really taken on that role of being not only her family, but her best friend, and not just a surface level best friend, but the best friend that would help you hide a body.
Yes.
Best friend.
And I think we obviously Feyre doesn't know this, but we know how deep it is that Moore cares for Feyre because of the things.
Yeah.
So no one's obviously told her what to expect from Starfall. So Feyre's asking Moore about Cassian. And this is a bit of girl banter.
Yes. Yeah.
So she's like, so tell me about Cassian. What's the deal? And Moore goes on to explain to Feyre that they've only slept together once and Moore was 17. Obviously, she was a virgin. She did it to piss Eris off or to piss her family off.
Yeah.
And when Rhys found out, he lost his fucking mind.
Yeah.
So he was very protective. But it was more to the point that he knew politically how that would have put everybody in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah.
And obviously Azriel was fuming.
Yeah.
So they obviously haven't slept together since. There's nothing really there.
Well, Azriel actually went away that night that it happened.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if there's
Everyone
something.
did, didn't they?
Yeah, except Cassian. So
Yeah.
I wonder if Moore says that she specifically sought out Cassian because he was the strongest and blah, blah, blah. But I wonder if Azriel had loved her before that and was incredibly hurt by her choosing Cassian.
I reckon.
Yeah.
And what would have happened if Cassian had gone with Rhys and
That's
Azriel
right.
was at the
Had
point?
stayed.
Would she have chosen, all the things. Anyway, that's beside the point. We're now dissecting something that happened in a fictional world.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is how invested we are, guys. I promise. I'm very invested in Azriel, as we all know.
Yeah.
So Rhys finally makes an appearance and says that he wasn't ignoring her, but he needed some time. And obviously Feyre has burned him in person and then burned him again, calling him a coward via text.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm amazed he rocked up. He tells her to look up into the sky and she sees what she thinks is a star flying across the sky and there's lots of stars and she notes that they look like fireworks essentially. He takes her up to a little private balcony.
Yeah.
She doesn't deserve it, but okay.
She doesn't.
She absolutely doesn't.
Now, before we talk about that, though,
yes.
I just want to raise the fact that somebody's missing.
Oh, absolutely.
Amren.
Yeah, she's not interested.
missing.
She's not interested.
So Moore says to Feyre when she asks about where she is, she says, something about Starfall disturbs her, she claims, which I think is a really interesting thing.
I think we need to start cataloguing all of the little bits and pieces and then dissecting we'll have a little Amren episode.
I think Amren knows what these things
The
are,
spirits.
the stars.
Okay.
I think she either knows what they are and it creeps her out or that it's part of some sort of tradition from back yonder that's sort of progressed over the years.
Okay.
Yeah, I just find it really interesting that she is not at the event of the year in Valaris.
Yeah, it is
It's
interesting.
very telling that there's something extra there.
Okay, we need to remember this.
Okay, I'll write it down.
Yeah. Make a list.
Yeah.
If in case you are wondering, Pidge does love a list.
I do.
You really do.
I love hundreds of lists.
Yes, yeah.
You should see my notes for the podcast.
I do love it. She does keep me in check. So Rhys obviously does end up taking her to a little balcony. Like I said, she absolutely doesn't deserve this delicious treatment.
Yeah.
Feyre has the decency to now apologise. She obviously says she doesn't mean what she said.
Well, she realises that what she actually said was about her. And when she was like, who would bother with that sort of mess? She was actually referring to her own mess.
Yes.
And the truth is, which she can't see, is that Rhys would bother with that mess.
For a very good reason. So Rhys is up there talking about the stars and Rhys is explaining to her that they're not actually stars in the sky, but they're spirits on a yearly migration. And he tells her that every year that he spent under the mountain on Starfall, Amarantha would make him service her. So he knew that he was never going to be able to celebrate this particular momentous occasion. And Amarantha absolutely knew how important it was to him. So obviously she, made him
Spend the night in her bed.
spend the night. Disgusting. Feyre goes to reach for Rhys's hand, but at that very moment, one of these spirits smacks her in the face, and it's like this. I liken it to like slime.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
This glowing green
Glow in the dark.
light. Like,
Yeah.
glow in the dark
Yeah.
gack.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Do you remember gack?
No.
I'll show you after.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
It was like that slime that it came in a container and you could press into the container and it would make a fart sound.
We would never allow that in my house. Okay. 3 girls, none of us had farting slime.
I shall show
Was
you.
not our
You
thing.
missed out. You missed out. So then Reese is hit by the same. So they're both glowing, they're both smiling, and she realises that they've never laughed. She has never laughed or smiled at him before, despite everything that he's done for her. And I was like, wow. When I read that, I was like, he has saved you so many times.
Yeah.
And this is the first time, and not forgetting how burnt he was when she smiled at Tarquin. Now she's smiling at him for a very genuine reason, like genuine-hearted reason, and it's very lighthearted. There's no angst. No one's forcing anyone to do anything. And then finally she lets an emotion through and she's like, oh, shit. This is the first time I've smiled at him.
Yeah.
Girl, I just can't believe that he's still into her.
I trust me, if I was Feyre, I would have been smiling this whole time.
You'd be like,
I do not care if I'm murdering someone at the time. If I'm looking at Reese, I'm smiling. Might come across creepy, but trust me, I'm there. Feyre asks Reese to dance all night if she wishes, which is lovely. However, she does describe the dancing between Moore, Cassian and Asriel. And she says, flowing between Asriel and Cassian like the 3 of them were one unit, one being, which is really interesting because we had spoken previously about the Morrigan and how the Morrigan was often seen as 3 separate beings.
Yep.
Or 3 separate goddesses that are the one goddess.
Yes.
And it just made me liken to that maybe Cassian and Asriel are her two other beings, and like important in her life. We don't yet know how Asriel fits in, but we know how Cassian fits in. I feel like there's more there.
Oh,
I
think
we need
there's
the
more
story
there.
of more.
We do need more of more. This makes my brain go a bit funny because of the things that we know about other people that are mated, etc., and other orientations. Now, but my brain wants to explant and implant another person into that trio.
Okay.
So obviously I don't want to give away too many spoilers because we try to keep things in relative chronological order. So I'm not going to suggest anything, but off recording, I'm going to tell you my thoughts. And when we get to the point in Aka War and Silver Flames, we'll reintroduce this. Because I think you're onto something.
They dance all night and everything was great. Reese goes into his own room. Feyre goes into hers when they get back to the townhouse. But for the first time, she lingers for 30 minutes and waits to see if he'll turn up.
Yeah.
Which is like, thinking about it, it's like, okay, and then he doesn't turn up. But we know that between Feyre and Reese, she can't shield that well.
No.
And that sometimes
Useless.
there's things that she shouts down the bond that she can't help it, especially in high emotional times.
Yeah.
So I wonder, did Reese hear her being like,
surely.
Waiting.
He knows. But shields are up, he knows.
Then it means that he chose not to come. Yeah. Think about that for a little bit.
I'll play the devil's advocate here because he takes her home, he kisses her brow and then leaves her, and then Feyre says she feels like a traitor for wanting Reese when she's only been gone months from Tamlin.
Yep.
I think he hears that.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the reason he doesn't invite himself in, because he is not one to put himself in this comparison triad situation. He wants Feyre to choose him for him, as we've find out later.
Yeah.
So I think it's got a lot more to do
I
with
agree.
her thoughts on Tamlin
Yeah.
than he just has exceptional willpower.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next day, I guess they're home in the wee hours, so it really is that day.
Yeah.
They go to the Illyrian war camp.
Yeah, they're backing it up. Like I would have been like, can we just have one more cup of tea, please?
If I'm hungover, I need more time to recover than if I had minor surgery.
Yeah, look, we're old. We're old and we've got young children and big jobs and lots of housework and lots of reading.
And so much recording.
So much recording. And I just want to stay home. Please don't bother me.
Yeah. Yeah. I especially don't want to go to a campground.
Yeah.
When I'm hungover.
Yeah. Illyrians.
Yeah.
3 are enough.
Yeah. 3 are enough.
Yeah.
So she describes there's like tents everywhere, fires, communal fires. Off to the side are some fighting rings and then some permanent, shabby but there permanent dwellings. Yeah. A very rude man arrives, I will say.
Very rude. Sometimes I think Rhys just really chooses when to fight and when to not bother because he doesn't want anything to do with having to rule these people. So he's like got his people that do his bidding, but these people that do his bidding are very rude.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think they're probably strategic though, right? Because if the Illyrians are seen outside of the Night Court, they are presented with Mr. Lord Devlin.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh yeah, everything about the Night Court is consistent.
Yeah.
They're rude and assholes and manipulative and secretive and blah, 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 blah.
Look, it checks out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's the leader of the camp.
Correct.
Yeah.
They have a small conversation about the girls' training. So this is the first time we hear of the female
Females.
Illyrians being trained.
Yeah.
Rhys stakes his claim on Feyre as well because I think the Lord Devlin sniffs her again. I'm like, that's even more insulting than Amren sniffing you.
Yeah.
Rhys stakes his claim by calling Feyre, she's mine. And he says those awful things about, that she'll cut off your head and, your fingers or whatever and that he'll crush your bones into dust.
Yeah.
Which is...
Yes, I do love it because he says it to him like you'll suffer. And then when Feyre's done, and I love that because he's like, but Feyre isn't even expecting it because she's expecting that Rhys is just being territorial because that's what Tamlin would do.
Yes.
But actually, Rhys is paying her a compliment again.
Yeah.
Because she's quite capable of fucking him up herself.
Yeah. They fly off to train. So they're not stopping work even though they're hungover. So they fly off to a private spot in the forest. Essentially, they remove Feyre from potentially burning down the camp because she's not very good with her power yet and it's a bit wild.
Yeah.
So they go off to a private place in the forest where it doesn't matter what she does. Rhys explains again, so we learn something new in this chapter about the blood rite. So we're learning this in book 2, but we actually don't hear a huge amount about it again until Silver Flames.
Yes.
But he does explain blood rite and what happened to him, Cassian and Asriel during their blood rite. When they get there, she asks Rhys how him and Tamlin met. And so we know already that Tamlin had told Feyre that his father and brothers were killed by another High Lord, and that was Rhys's father.
Yes.
But we don't know how Rhys's mother and sister died.
Yeah.
So it all ties in. So Rhys tells her about it. Tamlin's father felt threatened by Rhys, even though Rhys wasn't High Lord yet. He could, because remember they give off that whiff of power or, the aura of power. So Tamlin's father was threatened by Rhys, knew that he was very powerful and would eventually become High Lord of the Night Court. So he decided that he would try and assassinate him. So Rhys had originally taken pity on Tamlin and had taught him some Illyrian moves and weapons and, things like that. And they were semi-friends. Rhys had felt bad for Tamlin because he was one of a few brothers and didn't actually want to be High Lord but had the most power. Rhys was the only male child at that point and was going to be High Lord. So they kind of bonded a bit.
Yep.
Tamlin's dad felt as though it was best to try and kill Rhys before, cut off the head of the snake, essentially.
Yeah.
So they set out, and Tamlin, trying to, I guess, get his father and family's approval, decided to go with them.
Yeah.
Rhys had disclosed to Tamlin where he would be at a point in the forest one night.
Yeah.
And so Tamlin told his dad that. So Tamlin's dad, Tamlin, and Tamlin's brothers set out to that point to kill Rhys. Only that Rhys wasn't there, but Rhys's mother and sister were, because that was the rendezvous point where Rhys was going to meet his mother and sister. But Rhys got caught up doing some training at the war camp, and so he couldn't leave.
Yeah.
So Tamlin's dad, Tamlin, and his brothers turn up, and there's 2 females there. They know who they are, so they kill them. They cut off their heads and send them down the river.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah. And then they cut off their wings and take them back to the spring court.
I've actually got goosebumps.
Yeah, it's very brutal,
It is brutal, and I just think that was totally unnecessary. Like killing 2 females, you're still exactly where you were before. Why would you bother? Like that's...
So there's a theory here, which I'm not sure if you've heard about or not.
I don't know, tell me.
So there's the pool of starlight in the spring court. Some say that's a portal.
Yeah,
and that the rendezvous point was actually in the spring court, and that his mother and sister escaped rather than died. And that's why later on Feyre can't find their wings, but their heads were found. So I don't know if you can magic someone, like a paper mache head of somebody down the river. So anyway,
okay.
It's an interesting theory. And it is
where is the theory that the portal goes to?
Not sure. Not sure.
I'm gonna throw a bone and say wherever Miriam and Draken are.
I'm going to throw a bone and say into the Crescent City novels.
Oh, fuck! That would be epic.
To the Feylands. Anyway, interesting.
Wow. Okay.
So to finish off that train of thought, so now we've got Rhys's dad and Rhys pissed.
Yep.
We've got Tamlin's dad, Tamlin, and his brothers back at the spring court. That night, Rhys's dad decides to go and get revenge and kill Tamlin's dad.
Absolutely.
Rhys goes with him.
Yep.
So they turn up to the manor that Tamlin still lives in, that Feyre was in. They kill Tamlin's dad.
Yep.
They kill Tamlin's 2 brothers.
Yep.
They go down the hall to open Tamlin's room, but he opens the door before them, smells the blood and knows what's happened, and immediately kills Rhys's father.
Yeah.
So at that moment, Tamlin's dad dies.
Yep.
Then Rhys's dad dies, and the exchange of power happens.
Yeah. They both
to both of
see
them
it.
right at the same time.
Yeah.
So they both see and feel it happen, and Rhys disappears. He winnows away.
Absolutely.
And that's how they both became High Lord of the Night and the Spring Court at the same time.
And this is obviously why they have I am a bit worried about why they don't hate each other more. Like I can understand why they've got beef.
Yeah.
But this seems like, I don't think this is even.
No.
I still don't think this is even.
Well, are you mad?
Yeah.
So Feyre feels the same.
Yeah.
So she realises.
Maybe I'm Rhys's mate.
Maybe. Oh, that means I'm Asriel's.
Stand by. Just redact that.
So Feyre is mad. She's mad at Tamlin because he played the guilt card and was like, oh, my family was killed by another High Lord, without actually revealing that him and his family went and killed 2 females, innocent females who had no bargaining chip, as in Rhys's mum was Rhys's dad's mate, but she wasn't going to take – she wasn't High Lady.
No.
As in like wasn't going to take the title.
No.
And his sister had less power than him, so she wasn't going to be High Lady. So they completely had no chips in the bag and they just killed them.
Dumb.
Yeah. So Feyre is mad that Tamlin essentially admitted information to make himself seem like, you know, poor me.
Yeah.
Whereas in actual fact, it was all their fault.
God, that's so much, isn't it?
Yeah. Rhys tells Feyre that he didn't tell her sooner, as he didn't want her to think that he was trying to use, like, to turn her against Tamlin.
Yeah.
And so he never told her until she asks, basically. Feyre, as we know, she uses her anger and she sees a vivid image of a painting that she'd like to do of Rhys. And she tells him and she says, I want to paint you. And He scoops her up into his arms and in typical Reese fashion, he says, "A nude would be best." That's it for this episode of the Night Shift Court podcast. Join us for next week's episode where we will continue the adventure from ACOTAR's Book 2, A Court of Mist and Fury.
Whichever platform you're listening on, we would so appreciate if you could give us a 5-star review. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Night Shift Court.
I hope the night is kind.